What's going on, guys? This is Gainz Gaming. Today we are talking about chaining in KvK and what marches I like to use the most and what other marches you could use that I personally don't use. So obviously there are a lot of commanders that you could use in Season of Conquest to chain barbarians. The most important thing you want to look for is something that has multiple AoE, typically in a circle. That is going to be the most optimal way to chain barbarians in Season of Conquest and really in general. Also, being able to spread around the map is really important in order to just get around more often. So if you are too condensed into one area, it's going to be really hard to continue to chain because you're just not going to have barbarians in sections. And so you want to make sure that you are going all around the map in order to get the best bang for your buck for your time. Because obviously chaining can be a very time consuming action where you are trying to, get as much value as you can for your AP. So you want to make sure you are actually getting around the map to certain areas where there's more barbarians. And if you are able to get into a section that has higher level barbarians, like for example, we just won our zone 5 pretty easily in the last couple of days. It took us really 24 hours to win it. And now we have this entire safe zone to chain barbarians in. And so I just, random teleported in, and now I am using 4 different marches to chain. I would be using 5, but we do have a ruins, and I just didn't want to forget because it's, in the 3 hours. So I kept a march over there, but I want to make sure that I get the best value I can. So obviously I'm spreading around the map a little bit. You want to try to make sure you stay alive as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. And as you can see, the marches I am currently using, I am using Heraclius with Frederick. I'm using Zhuge with Richard. I'm using Hukabing with YSG, and I'm using Double C and Theodora. Now, obviously there are a ton of different commanders you could use in Season of Conquest that are going to do really well when it comes to chaining. But the thing you want to look for the most is, like I said, sustainability and the ability to hit more than one barbarian. Obviously, any AoE is going to trigger more than one barbarian, but having a circular AoE is going to be absolutely phenomenal for hitting barbarians, because that way you don't have to line up perfectly with your active skill. Like Heraclius, for example, has one of the biggest active skills in the game, so he's one of the easiest commanders to chain with. And I actually just started using Heraclius and Freddy today because I was just playing around with different options that I could use. I even used Heraclius and Lohar, and that did pretty well. It just did really no damage. But with Lohar healing at the end, it made him stay alive forever. But I was looking for something that just add a little bit more power and more damage, I should say. And Freddy does offer that. A lot of things people forget about with Freddy is, if I pull up his skill kit here, you can see his second skill actually has a chance to do 1000 healing factor, which doesn't sound like a ton, but that adds up quite a bit. And it's every 5 seconds. And then you also have an extra 15% unit capacity. So you're going to have more troops there as well. But one thing you might notice as well is that I do have a troop expansion. So I will run a 25% troop expansion because I don't use those for fighting anyway, and I have a pretty big number of them. I really only use the 50% for fighting unless I'm only going to be online for like an hour. Then maybe I'll only use a 25% just to make sure I keep as many of those as possible. But when it comes to having that expansion, that's going to be really important, especially if you are not maxing tech. Such as myself, I don't have my call to arms maxed out. I have it as far as I can get it as of right now. I have 6 out of 10 and 2 out of 10. So I don't have super huge armies. And so, that makes it a little bit harder to hit barbarians. One thing I also don't have is a ton of tech into barbarian attacks. Because, if I increase this, it'd make chaining 100 times easier because I'd be doing more damage. And so, if I was really, pushing tech this KvK, I probably would max this out just to get, faster chains. But personally, right now I don't really care too much for it, because I'd rather invest those crystals into fighting technology instead, just because I feel like I'd get a lot better value for that. But when it comes to chaining, a couple things that are also important is you don't want to be hitting more than 2 barbarians at a time. Because if you're hitting more than 2 barbarians at a time, you will die. And that's just the reality of it. Doesn't matter what march you have, doesn't matter if you have gear on that march, your troop will die. And that's because you're just taking too much damage. And so ideally, like, the way that you chain is very important. You want to make sure you get the barbarian to like half health, a little bit below half health before introducing the next barbarian. So that way you can actually kill this before you're taking double damage for a sustained period of time. So, this one I probably connected a little bit too early, but, it's still still helps. You can see right here with Hookah Bang. That's why he's so good for hitting barbarians, because he has that huge healing factor when he's expertised. So that makes it really, really, really nice to use Hookah Bang. And so, a lot of these commanders have their own unique aspect of hitting barbarians with. Like, Hookah Bang has a healing factor. Obviously, Zeuge has the ability to decrease your AP cost. I've covered that in another video as well. And as I was talking, I completely forgot to move over Hookah Bang, so he will probably not be able to move that over. But this is the kind of situation that's a little bit tougher, because ideally you want to hit the lowest level barbarian first, but in this situation, I'm going to aggro both of the marches. So what I'm going to do is try to come down here and make sure we don't hit that level 47 right away, but just hit the 49 and 45. I'm probably gonna have to return home after this because it's just gonna kill my march. So you have to, pick your battles pretty strictly, I should say, just because you don't want to be going home every so often. You want to make sure that you are reducing your trips home, and so that way you can optimize your time that you're actually out in the field hitting barbarians. Because if you're constantly marching home, you're losing a ton of time as well. That's the other reason why you want more than one march. If I just had one march, like, sure, I'd be able to optimize it really, really well and be able to control it really well. But I'd rather just control one march at a time, as I'm chaining. And you can see I just hit that level 47, just as I was saying. But, that way you can actually control your one march and have your other marches marching around. That's really the best case scenario. So that way you're not, spending too much time just waiting for your march. Because if I just had Hookah Bang, I'd be waiting and waiting and waiting, versus I can, look at my other marches and see, okay, let's move stuff around. Let's make sure I'm in the right spot. So there's a lot of ways you can optimize when it comes to chaining in KVK, not only just commanders, but also putting gear on those commanders. That is a must in KVK, because these barbarians are way too strong to not use your equipment on. So, putting your equipment onto your marches, even though, your Sunset King is going to be destroyed because of it, doesn't really matter. Like you can see right here, I don't know how I won that one, but I don't have any gear on really any of my marches besides, I think Luce is the only march that has gear on. That's an actual march of mine in Sunset Canyon. And so if you're going to chain, you have to know that you are going to get knocked down in Sunset Canyon. You have to be okay with that. Personally, I couldn't care less about it. All I really care about in the Lost Canyon shop is the one iconic crystal, which is 20,000 coins, which is nothing. Even your farm accounts can get that really easily in KVK. So really not a huge deal. I know some people are really picky about that and they care way too much about it. But when it comes to chaining, like, consistency is key as well. I've only really chained twice, last night and tonight. And so obviously I don't have a ton of honor, but I'm also, playing the long game. I'm not pushing honor this KVK. Like, I'm not going to be trying to push to top honor ranks. I never really have tried to do that. I also just don't have the AP to do that either. I have a decent amount of AP, but not nearly enough to push into a top rank or really even consider pushing into a top rank, just because, obviously it'd be nice if I could eventually, but personally, I don't really want to do that because that's a huge time commitment in my opinion, and a time commitment I don't really want to make, because I'd rather spend my time fighting. I don't want to spend my all day, every day chaining barbarians to try to get, one more conquest coin. I honestly couldn't really care less about that. But when it comes to, chaining efficiently, the way that you chain is going to be way more important than what commanders you are using. But if you are using commanders that have AoE in a circular formation, it's going to be way easier. If you have commanders that heal, that is a must-have as well. That's why, that's why I have Freddy, because he's going to heal as I attack. That's why I have Richard, because he's going to heal. That's why I have Hookah Bang, because he's going to heal. And that's why I have Double C, because he's also going to heal. So mixing a healing commander with an AoE commander is really the best way to do it, because that way you're going to sustain, you're going to last a lot longer in the field. But not only that, knowing how to chain correctly and not just like going here and aggravating all four of these barbarians at the same time. Because even if you have like the best gear in the game and the best tech in the game, you are going to take quite a bit of damage and you're just not going to be able to last as long. So you have to be smart when you're doing it too. You can't just dive in and be like, yep, okay, I'm going to get all four. Instead, you have to, hit one, get it down in health a little bit, connect it to a second one, get that one down in health, connect it to a third, get that down in health, and so on. And so that's why running more than one chain march at a time is so nice. It's because you're able to do that a lot easier. Because otherwise, like, if you're just doing one march at a time, it's like, okay, well, now I, just have to wait and it's just a waiting game until I'm ready to move on to the next one. And that's boring. That's why a lot of people hate chaining, because they're like, it just takes way too long. It's because they only are using one chain march, which makes sense. That's why it's taking them so long, because they're only using one. And this one's going to be tricky because I don't want to aggravate both of them, but I still want to aggravate one. So, it does, take some strategy. Obviously, it's not super easy to do. It is a skill that you have to learn. And the more you can do it, the more practice you're going to get with it as well. So I always encourage people to, practice chaining, especially if you're first starting out the game and you have a max YSG. For sure, use max YSG. He's awesome to use for chaining, and you should be using him for chaining if you have him. But you definitely shouldn't be investing into YSG just to chain with him. You could just save for Zhuge Liang in Season of Conquest, and you're going to get the same exact thing. So if you guys enjoyed the video, do me a favor, drop a like and subscribe. Let me know what commanders you use in Season of Conquest to chain barbarians, because I've been trying to play around with different options. I'm not set on all these. Like, obviously there's probably better ones available. It's just what works for me. Nothing's going to last forever. Things are going to slowly run out of health until you have better technology. I'm still at the beginning of KVK, so obviously tech isn't going to be the best. But toward the end of KVK, especially in like the starting zone, doesn't really matter what you do. Your marches just are not going to die, because you're in the starting zone. You have basically max tech. So the better tech you can get, the better your situation is going to be, obviously. But playing smart is going to be one of the biggest things to do as well. But if you guys enjoyed the video, do me a favor, drop a like and subscribe, and let me know again what commanders you were using to chain in the open field. Thanks for checking out the video. Have a great rest of your day.